Hi everyone, and welcome to Bluebeam Review. My name is Ari, and I'm a Bluebeam certified instructor with Digital Drafting Systems. Today, we're going to learn about Bluebeam's plugins that it installs in several different programs. Bluebeam has many plugins that it installs in several different kinds of programs. In Windows, for example, we have a previewer in our folders here that allow us to essentially preview different kinds of files. I'm going to get one prepared for us, and then I'm going to move my folder from my other monitor right here. So for example, with a PDF not selected, the previewer looks normal, and this is the Windows one. But as soon as we select a PDF, now this is actually Bluebeam's previewer, and you can see that the buttons here reflect some of the buttons that are actually in Bluebeam Review. Now, what I recommend is if you're only able to navigate down and up with scrolling pages, just select one full page and you can zoom in and out with your mouse wheel, and you should be able to pan around by clicking the left mouse button. Sadly, the middle mouse wheel does not seem like it can be used to pan in this previewer, so the left mouse button is being used here. This is just one example. Other examples are in the Microsoft Office products, so you'll either find a plugin at the top in your tabs where your ribbon is, where you're going to see Bluebeam. I'm not going to demonstrate them today, but what I will demonstrate is how to turn them on and the ones in AutoCAD and Revit. So let's look at how we turn them on. To turn on our plugins, we can go into our search bar down here in Windows, whether it's Windows 11 or 10, and we can type in Bluebeam, and we're looking for the Bluebeam Administrator. And there's different Bluebeam administrators depending on the version of Bluebeam Review that you have installed on your computer. Now, before opening this, you'll want to have two things. You'll need to either be an administrator or know your administrator password, and you'll need to close out of Bluebeam Review and any other programs that Bluebeam installs plugins into. Because I'm demonstrating this, I'm going to leave Bluebeam Review and those programs open right now because I'm not going to make any changes. I'm going to right click, run as administrator. I'm going to type in my credentials, so please bear with me. I'm assuming my screen recording software is not picking up on this, and that's okay. I'll blur it out if I have to. All right, so I put in my credentials, and here is the Bluebeam Administrator. Now, because I'm using the Bluebeam Administrator 21, the plugins for Review 21 are the only ones that are available for me to turn on or off. So you can see that they can actually be turned on or off by clicking on the text, not necessarily on the box to the left, funnily enough. But you can see in this list what programs are examples, and this administrator is detecting programs that are installed on my computer. So I have different versions of different Autodesk programs, for example. Microsoft Office programs are available here. Even Internet Explorer, the old web browser, has a plugin that you could turn on, but it's usually not really necessary. Actually, funnily enough, when you mouse over these, on the right side, we can see that there's some text that says that the Microsoft Excel plugin for U21 from 2010 to 2016 will be turned on if we turn on the Internet Explorer one. So this text right here is quite interesting. Meanwhile, we can also use the Bluebeam Administrator to check any network configurations, and we can manage that here. We have printer options, so if you ever have any issues with printing, make sure that you do have a printer name. Sometimes your actual printer name will be blank, so we've seen issues there where the printer has lost some data or some files were not installed properly. You can always stop your printer and restart it here. And you can even manage some AutoCAD page sizes here if you need to, but the Bluebeam plugin actually allows us to do that. This is how we can turn on and off certain kinds of plugins. Now let's look at two very common programs that we use the plugins with. Once you've turned your plugins on, you can go into AutoCAD and Revit, for example, and you can find them. In AutoCAD, you can go into your Output tab at the top of your ribbon, and you'll see that Bluebeam has its own little panel right here. Firstly, before creating a PDF, you can go to Change Settings. Within this area, you can also create a PDF by clicking on Create File. So let's look at some settings first before we do that. We can prompt for our file name, of course, and we have many different options under General. We can go to Folder Options and choose how exactly we're going to be outputting this. So we can look at our last saved folder, for example, or just keep a folder that we were using. We can put everything into a specific folder if we need to, etc., etc. Then under what to plot, we can choose different kinds of tabs and layouts and model views if we need to. We can also configure this. And of course, under all layout tabs, you can include model space if you need to. And we have some transfer data. This is very important. So if you do have things like hyperlinks and block data, things like that, you may want to transfer them even SHX fonts, if you don't have this turned on, then the SHX fonts may not operate properly necessarily in your PDF, and they may not even be detected or compatible. So you want to check this on or off depending on the situation. In general, I recommend not using SHX fonts because they don't work well with editing text, and they're not really vector data. They come out as polylines sometimes, so you have to be extremely careful. All right, let's look at plot quality. Here we can actually change that. So we can see that our plot quality can go up to 1200 if we need it to. So our dots per inch for the image, of course. 300 is good for saving on some data. And we can go to advanced here as well, and we have even more options for how we're going to save our PDFs. So we don't necessarily have to create PDFs from here. We can actually save different kinds of file types directly from AutoCAD. So this could be quite useful if you need to do that. Then you can compress your data if you need to. So right now we have it set to graphics, but you can also compress a little bit more with photographs, etc., etc. You can change your quality here. So there's a lot of settings here that you can start to play around with, and you can see how they work. So lots of different configurations. Let's look at the tab at the top here for page setup. This allows us to essentially use the exact same settings in AutoCAD's plot section to print our pages. So we can use those settings for all of our pages. So right now, if we just leave it under native AutoCAD, you can see that nothing can be changed. It's taking whatever settings we have for this particular file and just using them. Of course, this can be overwritten by clicking on the little drop down and going to custom. Now I can start to modify these settings within here. It's not necessary to do so here. You can still just click on your printer button up here and change the exact same settings there and just use the native AutoCAD option. Either way is fine. You can always have some different settings here compared to those settings up there if you needed to. And then luckily, after you change some settings, you should be able to click on save. Let's see if that becomes available to us. Not quite yet, so I believe that we need a plot style table. Let's see if that is going to work. Not quite yet. So I believe that after we create our first file, we may be able to save that, or I believe manage may be able to help us. At least we can add some more here. There it is. So now in this section, we can click on add. We can call it 8.5 x 11 printing. And I'll put my initials in just so I know it's customized, AR. We can't have the underscore, so let's be careful. I think that I can do it like this. Letters and numbers, the point, the dot here. So 8 and 8 by 11. I think we're just going to do 8 by 11 and we'll know that that's a half. So that should be fine. Excellent. And then we're going to click OK. There we go. So these naming conventions, you do have to be very careful. So we'll click OK. And now under page setup, we can choose that option, that configuration, and we can customize that. So we can have this preset and ready to go for certain kinds of prints and certain kinds of page sizes, for example. We're going to go to PDF security. There are some security options that are actually similar to the ones in Bluebeam Review. So we can require a password to open the file, or we can limit printing and editing just like we would in Review. So a lot of these settings here, you can toggle between them, turn them on or off if you need to, etc., etc. And then under bookmarks, this area is very important. You'll want to choose how your PDFs are going to be named and what data is going to be used to name them. So if you don't want to use the actual drawing name in your model space, then don't use drawing. And then layouts instead could be used for all of your sheets. So you can just use layout here. And you can see that on the right side, it gives us some instructions as to what exactly is going to happen. So it's actually going to be using the drawing name as the parent here, and then the layouts as the children. And if you choose layout, then essentially the layouts will be all peers with each other. So they'll be equal. There will not be parent and child relationships, just like they say in bookmarks. You can also include your page number. You can include file extensions, etc., etc. And there's even more settings under the dynamic text section. So you can use these categories here and start to insert very specific data. So if you want to get your computer's username, then you can get that. Certain file names and file paths can automatically be placed as well to label pages. And if you wanted the date associated with this, then you can automatically have that included as well. It's quite interesting. So if I click on this, you can see the actual code for putting in the date. The time should be exactly the same convention, just different text inside, etc., etc. So there's a lot of data here that you can use, basically, and brackets and the name of the category here will get that to work. So very good stuff. So these are the settings in AutoCAD. Now let's look at the settings in Revit. Let's go to Revit now, and let's see how the plugin works in Revit. It's actually a little bit different, but there are some similarities. In the ribbon at the top, we're actually going to find it under the Add-ins tab, which is the first difference. We can see some of the buttons are the same, including change settings, so we can just use that button to both create a file and, of course, change our settings before doing so. And we can see that a lot of the options here are very similar to the ones in AutoCAD, but Revit has sheets instead of layouts, so we can see that we can add certain kinds of sheets, selected sheets and views, click on select, and now we can truly customize this. So we can show different kinds of sheets by category, and then we can make sure that we choose whichever configuration we want in this list up here. So this can be really, really useful. Then we can transfer certain kinds of data, and of course, change our plot data, our plot settings. The advanced settings are very, very, very similar to the ones in AutoCAD, as you can see right here. Now, what is also different about the plugin in Revit is that we can import and export configurations. So once you have a certain setting for certain kinds of sheet sizes, et cetera, you can export those here and then import them here. So then we can go to page setup. This is the same concept as in AutoCAD, but it tries to use Revit's settings. If you go to native Revit, of course, there's the custom section, and we can, of course, go to manage right here, and we can just add a new page setup right here, just like we did with AutoCAD. So all of that is basically about the same. Just need to use the same Revit settings that you would when you would use the regular printer button, which is also found right up here. Then PDF security, the exact same concept. We can require passwords for things. And the bookmark section will be, of course, a little bit different because Revit uses basically project and drawing data instead of really layout and drawing data. So you can also include things like page numbers, etc. You do have the dynamic text section just like before, so we can include that as well. And so that's how you can basically manage your settings for your plugin with Bluebeam Review in Revit itself. Thanks very much for watching our tutorial on how to use the Bluebeam Review plugin in several different programs like AutoCAD, Revit, etc. Once again, my name is Ari and I'm with Digital Drafting Systems, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.